Hello, welcome. My name's Andy. Thanks for joining me for this video. Sorry it's a little late. If you hang on it being available at the weekend, I'm sorry, I was a bit busy last one. Okay, this week we're going to have a look at another passage from Mark, but we skip ahead a bit. We skip ahead to Mark 9 verses 2 to 9. If you have a look at the text in the below this video, you can see a link to it there. So go and have a look. It's the Transfiguration, this event is called. Now it's a really strange story, and I don't think anyone's really totally sure what it's all about. So we'll describe what happens, and you can make up your own opinion about what it's about. So Jesus takes just a subgroup, it seems, of his disciples up a mountain. This is kind of in the middle of his ministry. He takes Peter, James and John and leads them up a mountain. It says, before that, it says, after 6 days, Jesus took them up the mountain. And that 6 days is really important. We'll come back to that later. So Jesus takes Peter, James and John up a mountain, and then the strangest thing happens. Jesus appears in white clothes. So Jesus appears dressed whiter than white, and beside him are two Old Testament heroes. There's Moses, who was the person who received the 10 Commandments and led the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt. So he's the absolute hero of the faith. And Elijah, who was a prophet, and famously, according to the scriptures, didn't die. He was taken directly up to heaven. Some people think that Moses didn't die either. So there's a tradition that Moses didn't die. But Jesus appears dressed in white. It says, it's quite cool. It says he became shining white, very like a bleacher on the earth couldn't have the power to whiten, whiter than white. And he appears with Moses and Elijah on this mountain. Very strange event. Now Peter, who was there alongside, was baffled. It says that he was terrified of what was going on. He'd never seen anything like this before, and he offers to make 3 tents, 3 shelters for them all. And then a big cloud appears, envelops the whole lot. God speaks, saying, "This is my son, my beloved, listen to him." And then when the cloud goes, we're back to normal again. Just Peter, James and John and Jesus in his normal appearance, not wearing all these white clothes. Now, what was going on? It's a mysterious passage. It's a very glorious passage. There are echoes of Jesus' baptism. Remember when Jesus was baptized, there was a voice from heaven saying, "This is my son, the beloved." We had that about 5 weeks ago. There's also, and I think this is great, there's also an understanding that Jesus is the new Adam. Let me explain. Remember at the start of this, it said that after 6 days. Now, when you hear the word 6 days, that might make you think back to the creation story. It was, the story goes that the world was put together in 6 days, and on the 7th day, God rested. So 6 days might be a clue that this is about creation. Eden was thought to be on a mountain top by some people at the time. So again, we've got a connection with the Eden story there. And perhaps most compellingly, people thought that Adam, before the fall, so before the temptation, before Adam's encounter with evil and his and getting it badly wrong, there was an understanding that Adam was clothed in glory. This was before he had to sew those fig leaves together to make some clothes when he was ashamed of his nakedness. It said Adam was clothed in glory, which people thought was shining white. So Jesus appearing after 6 days, which is when humans were made, on a mountain top, which is like Eden, in pure white. They're all hints that this is suggesting that Jesus is a new Adam, a new phase of human existence starting almost. But this time it won't end in a fall. It won't end up with sin entering into the world. So Jesus is the new Adam, leading us into a new creation, into the new life. Perhaps Moses and Elijah appeared because they thought that, remember I said that people thought that they hadn't died. So in a way they're the kind of, Jesus is the firstborn of the new creation. Moses and Elijah would therefore be kind of next in because they didn't really die the first time round. That's one suggestion of what they were doing there. Okay, so it's possibly indicating that a new phase of existence is occurring, and we get a glimpse into it here. We get a little foretaste of the future. A new people are raised from the dead, given a new life, a new sinless life, a new perfect existence. We might call that heaven. Okay? Now, in these videos, as we build up to the arrival of the Awakening art exhibition in May and June, I'm showing you a painting each video to try and introduce you to some of the works of art and give you some background knowledge so that you can, when you see them in the flesh, you'll have a bit of a head start. Now, there isn't a painting in the art collection about the Transfiguration. So what I've chosen instead is this one. Maybe it's a shock after all this talk of Jesus being in bright light and in glory. It's a painting called The Stripping of Our Lord by Philip Lebas, I think that's how you pronounce it, painted in the early 1950s, soon after the Second World War. And apparently he wanted to depict the worst thing happening to Jesus. So he's got a picture here of Jesus having his clothes taken off. You might better make out in the background there's a Roman soldier in a suit of armour taking off Jesus' clothes, ready for the crucifixion. Now there's a view that the Transfiguration passage is it's like a mirror image of the crucifixion, which happens right at the end of Mark's Gospel. Let me explain. Okay, so both events happen on a hill. They're both climactic events. They both involve light and darkness. In the Transfiguration, Jesus is there's a whole lot of light. In the crucifixion story, it says darkness came over the land. In the Transfiguration, Jesus is wearing these glorious white clothes. In the crucifixion, he's stripped. There are two, in the Transfiguration, we had Moses and Elijah either side of him, so two heroes of the faith. And in the crucifixion, Jesus is crucified in Mark's Gospel with two criminals either side who hurl abuse at him. So totally opposite in terms of support. The disciples were there at the Transfiguration, even though they were making daft suggestions, they were there. At the crucifixion, they'd all fled. And at the Transfiguration, God's voice was heard. God the Father spoke into the situation and reminded everybody of his love for his Son. But at the crucifixion, although Jesus calls out, God the Father is silent. There's no reply, and Jesus dies. So, in a way, they're kind of polar opposites. They're similar. They've got a similar structure, but one's all good and one is all bad. There's a light one and a dark one. So maybe the Transfiguration, the passage for today, is a glimpse that God will make all things that are bad good again. It's a look into the future, a promise that everything that's wrong about the world, everything that's evil, all forms of death, even the things that Jesus went through on the cross, they can be redeemed. God can turn all of that into good. I think that's really what the Transfiguration story is about. It's a foretaste into the redemption of the world. This world is messed up in many, many ways, but the Transfiguration is a reminder that God can turn the worst of it around for good, and God will. Okay, I hope that's helpful. I hope to see you, well, might see you on Sunday. I'm at St John's this Sunday for Education Sunday. If you're in one of the other churches, or if you're listening from afar, then I hope you have a blessed time this weekend too. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.